So do you think that natural stones are going to survive at all?
So being completely unqualified to answer that question, I wanted to find someone who was qualified. And I found him in Paul Zimnisky. He's an independent analyst. And when I was asking people about who to talk to about the diamond industry, his name came up over and over again. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Give me a little bit of an understanding of the sort of elevator pitch. You must have to give this all the time. What's going on in the diamond industry? How do you explain it to people?
The last 5 years has been especially volatile and unusual. Going back to, say, the pandemic in 2020, we had $7 trillion of economic stimulus in the US, and people couldn't leave their houses to travel or go out to eat. So they bought material possessions, they bought hard luxury. Diamonds did particularly well because people were giving fewer but nicer, more expensive gifts to the loved ones that they were locked in with. And diamonds had a record year. And then if we look to 2023 to 2024, we were on the other side of that. The economic stimulus had kind of run its course and the economy opened back up. So people were kind of out traveling and gallivanting and spending money on these more experiential purchases again. And the industry went from understocked and sold out to overstocked. That's ultimately what's put pressure on prices. Also, China, which is the second largest consumer of diamonds in the world, they have not really recovered from the pandemic, at least from a discretionary purchasing standpoint. And everything from diamonds to luxury watches to high-end handbags are down significantly from the pre-pandemic levels in China. And then, with diamonds in particular, there's been a continued, mainstream distribution of man-made, lab-grown, synthetic, whatever you want to call them. But these, this product has been competing directly with natural diamonds. So that's kind of been going on in the background. So for all of these reasons, it's been a really bumpy ride for the diamond industry the last 5 years.
So I want to come back to a few of the things you've already brought up there, but I am fascinated by this conversation, especially around man-made or synthetic diamonds versus mined diamonds. When you think about different groups of consumers that want either a synthetic diamond or a mined diamond, how do you make that distinction? Why do some people want one and some people want the other?
Yeah, I think that we're getting to the point where the price differential between the lab-grown diamond and the natural diamond has gotten so ridiculously wide. I'll give you maybe an extreme example for looking at a 3-carat solitaire. So that's the most popular size category for the lab grown. You could buy that for literally under $2,000 today. The natural version's going to be over $50,000, right? So I think the consumer that is looking to buy the natural version probably isn't going to settle for the lab grown version. So I think that kind of concept or idea is going to continue to play out as the prices get wider and wider. But at the end of the day, again, you have to remember, this is a luxury product. People don't need diamonds. They buy diamonds because they like the way it makes them feel. I ultimately think that will be the saving grace for the natural diamond industry is again, because it is an emotional purchase. It's not a practical or a rational purchase. And that's, again, the case for all luxury. But I think if the industry plays its cards right and continues to tell the story that a diamond's 1 billion years old, and I think as we get into this digital world with virtual reality and AI and robotics, I think people actually will like the idea of carrying a souvenir of nature, if you will, around with them every day, all day.
There is also a big business story here. De Beers, which is seen as synonymous really with diamonds themselves, with the industry. Anglo American is getting ready to sell De Beers. Tell me a bit about the sale.
So De Beers is owned primarily by Anglo American. It's a large diversified mining company. They're restructuring the company to be primarily copper focused, and they're divesting De Beers, they're divesting their platinum business, they're divesting their nickel business, they're divesting their coal business. So they're going through a restructuring phase, and De Beers is included in that. So the company is up for sale. And like you said, the future owner of De Beers is significant for the larger diamond industry because De Beers is definitely the steward. With every luxury product, not just diamonds, marketing and kind of creating that desire and that allure and that kind of perception and that emotional desire, all of that matters, and it's tied to marketing and branding. So that's extremely expensive, but it's extremely relevant. And sometimes you have to spend a lot of money up front to get a payoff down the road. So these are the sort of things that I think potential buyers and investors in the company are thinking about.
Who are the realistic buyers? What's the sort of discussion over who might buy it?
What makes De Beers unique, like you said, it's you basically could buy the whole category. You could buy one of the most prominent luxury categories if you buy De Beers. So there aren't a lot of situations where one company represents a whole industry, comes for sale, right? So it's very unique from that standpoint, but it's also very unique in how vertically integrated it is. So it's obviously the mining assets, which are in Southern Africa, they're in Canada. And then you have the midstream, say the manufacturing portion of the business. And then you have the downstream, the retail, all of the marketing. And there are different businesses within the larger industry. And I think that's kind of the challenge. I think you have to know how to run a mining business. You have to know how to run a luxury company, right? And I think because of that, some sort of consortium where you have multiple parties with expertise in different areas of the industry, along with some big financial backers, these would probably be the most likely outcome if I was to guess. That said, the government of Botswana, which already owns 15% of De Beers outright, they also own half of the joint venture between the government of Botswana and De Beers, which holds most of the primary mining assets. They've indicated they actually want to buy a controlling stake in the company. So I think everything's on the table at this point.
China is really interesting in the diamond story, not just because, as we discussed earlier, there's been no full recovery from the real estate crisis and pandemic era struggles. That's on the demand side, but you've also got most of the supply, or a very large portion of the synthetic supply of diamonds coming from China. I presume there's a lot of griping about this, right? As you get in many industries, the sort of complaint about Chinese oversupply. What's going on there?
So there's probably 4 or 5 major quasi-government related Chinese entities that produce synthetic diamond. And historically, the Chinese have had a stranglehold on, say, the abrasive industrial synthetic diamond production business. So, diamonds that you use in cutting tools or construction equipment, that sort of thing. And to kind of give you some context here, so there'll be, say, 100 million carats of natural diamonds produced this year. Only half of those will be good enough for use in jewelry. But the Chinese will produce 10 to 12 billion with the B carats of synthetic diamond for abrasive industrial application. So I think it just kind of highlights that we can't forget the man-made or the synthetic diamond. This is a manufactured product. We can produce as many as we want. That doesn't mean we're going to see 10 billion carats of gem quality lab diamonds produced for jewelry next year, but it just shows that that is possible if the producers want to produce that much.
Paul, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
My pleasure.
Alice, I thought it was great there. Paul seemed to give traditional diamond companies exactly the sort of marketing line that they need, right? I get when he said the diamond's 1 billion years old and we live in a world of increasing incorporeal nature, increasingly digital and artificial, I was thinking, wow, yeah, I want to buy a diamond now. He sort of sold it to me.
Yeah, I mean, I do think this question of why somebody would choose a lab-grown or a mined stone over the other one really is core for the future of the industry. And I'm also sympathetic with the points he made about how people probably won't accept lab stones as a substitute for mined ones. And you can see that this is kind of true in all kinds of markets. I mean, the lab stones are chemically identical to the mined thing. To the eye, they look exactly the same. And something similar has happened with the luxury handbags market, where you have these super fakes that to anyone other than an absolute expert, and sometimes even experts are duped, are exact copies. And yet the luxury handbag market at the same time as these super fakes have come into the universe has basically never been doing better. And for those two things to be true, it has to be something intrinsic in people. They want to have the real thing. They want to have something that makes them feel good. Even if nobody else knows, they know that it's the real thing. And that gives you that like confidence or pep in your step or whatever it is that you're looking for. And that desire in people is definitely not going anywhere. The oldest jewelry that we've discovered is 150,000 years old. That is older than the evidence that we have for like complex language. We were communicating via jewelry and baubles and status signifiers before we could properly talk to one another. So I would bet on that impulse sticking around.
Yeah, completely. I agree with that totally. And I was trying to think of markets to compare it to, and you can pick almost anything, right? But cars, I feel like, are a good example. People will pay inordinate amounts of money for really, really high-end cars. And they'd like to pretend that this is a quality-adjusted purchase, I'm sure, but it isn't, right? It's a status-related purchase. It's just that the market for those sort of cars is now a tiny, tiny fraction of the market for cars globally. And I sort of wonder whether that's maybe where this is headed, in that the diamond industry just gets much, much bigger when you include the man-made ones and the mined ones together. And mined is a tiny, tiny proportion of that. But it's not really the same industry in a meaningful way. There's clearly lots of people who would just not buy a mined diamond, who will buy a man-made one, and vice versa when they want the real status uplift. I was thinking, like, for a thought experiment of what if you got the synthetics to be free, right? And imagining the process of like proposing to someone and being like, this is literally free, right? I'm not sure people would like it. I'm not saying that people are just looking at the ring as a symbol of value. It's something else as well. But that symbolism does seem to be acutely important here. And it makes it an unusual industry that you can't just say, oh, well, the price of synthetic production has gone to very low levels and therefore the mined stuff won't work. Because if that was true, we'd have never had diamonds in the first place, really.